Good evening all, and welcome. Are demons just the work of science fiction? Are they all made-up stories to scare children at night? Maybe, or maybe not. Are they real? Can they possess you? And can they wreak havoc on your life to an extent that knows no end? It's time to find out, and let the darkness take control. This story took place when I was 17, Christmas of 2015. For 2 weeks, my dad and I had decided to spend Christmas with our family, as I have always dreamed. He booked our tickets, and 2 months later we were on a plane to London, England. After an 8-hour plane ride, we were safely in London. Despite my anxiety, my uncle was there to drive us to the countryside, which took about 4 hours overall, as we ended up visiting family on the way to the countryside, food stops and toilet breaks. We finally made it to Helston, Cornwall. For the remainder of the 2 weeks, I would be staying alone with my wonderful grandparents, and my dad would be staying with his brother and his brother's now ex-wife. Most of what I remember from the trip was exploring Helston and Truro, eating a lot of Walker's crisps, illegally drinking alcohol in pubs because nobody ever asked for my ID, and going clothes shopping. I remember getting an eerie feeling almost the moment I got there. I had felt that way when I was at my grandparents' house 2 summers before that, and the many other homes I visited, and plenty of those homes are fairly old. I remember falling asleep many times, and I had this unnerving notion that someone was staring at me, or these random brushes of cold air when I would be laying in bed or making food in the kitchen. I never mentioned anything. If I ignored it, it would go away. Right? Well, you're dang right, it didn't. I felt safer with my door closed, because it felt like something was standing down that short but dark hallway leading to the living room. I would hear random noises almost every night, but I put it up to the fact that maybe I was just hearing my grandparents talk in their sleep, or because the house was old, that the house was settling or some other stuff. Despite the weird feelings, I was getting almost 24/7. I tried to ignore it, and did so successfully a few times. It all came to head when on New Year's Eve I returned home at around 2:50 a.m. I was really hungry, as my cousins threw a frozen pizza in the oven, and I wouldn't touch that stuff. I had had a few beers earlier on in the night, and I had 2 after midnight. So me seeing things wasn't out of the realm of possibility. I got this craving for a ham sandwich, put the rest of my beers in my room, dressed in my pajamas and went to the kitchen. Besides the kitchen was this little sunroom that would lead out back. There was a top level and a bottom level. The top level was open, but my grandparents were keeping the bottom level locked, as it was far too cold, and the heating was practically non-existent in the bottom level. The kitchen was lit up, but the top level of the sunroom was almost completely dark. As I was making my sandwich, I casually looked to the right. As I was buttering my bread, in the corner of my eye, I saw what looked like a tall yet hunched over figure. At first I believed that I was just being paranoid, put my stuff back in the fridge, and when I turned, the figure was still there. Anyone who listens to this, if you've ever played Left 4 Dead, does anyone remember the witch? Well, this strange shadowy creature looked like a dark, tall version of the witch. I couldn't make out any noticeable facial features, only a bony figure with long and bony fingers. The creature had long, almost stringy hair. It was almost as if the lights were beginning to dim just by the creature being there, and I swear it was somehow moving closer, but I hadn't seen one of its ginormous legs move once. I could feel my heart beating incredibly fast, just as it is now while I remember this, because I can still remember the feeling, and I still fear that I will see that creature again. I turned my fat ass around, sandwich in hand, and ran into my room. I felt a little nauseous and could barely finish my sandwich. I just wanted to go to bed, so that it could be daylight once again, and that if I was going to be killed, I'd hopefully be asleep if any strange demon decided it wanted me as a snack or something. I was going to be sleeping there for 2 more nights. I just had to get past it and stay strong. I didn't see that creature again during the rest of my stay there. I tried to get out of that house as much as I could, and was successful in doing so. The last creepy thing that happened when I was laying in bed at around 4 AM was we had a flight at 12, so I had to be up early for the long drive, and since the weather was abysmal, we wanted to leave early. I remember talking to my friend on Facebook, and I was talking about how scared I was of the flight. She told me I was going to be fine, that I wasn't going to die, and that I would get home safely in no time. When she told me that I wasn't going to die, I was like my body was being taken over, and I said out loud, "But I'm already dead." I told my dad what happened a few days after we got home. He said that maybe I saw the angel of death or something. I have no clue. I was, and still am, extremely freaked out, as it might just be one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had, with something that was clearly paranormal. The only reason I think it's real is because usually when I'm drunk or tipsy, I don't tend to take much notice of things. But when I saw this thing, it was like I had been snapped back to reality, and I couldn't even feel the alcohol I had been drinking before this moment. I'm sure there must be some sort of explanation. Perhaps I was just still feeling the effects of the alcohol, or maybe I was tired, and all of it just added up to a very creepy hallucination, or maybe something more. It was the fall of 2009. My fiancée and I had been living in our 1953 bungalow for a few months. She had been complaining that something had been messing with her at night, touching her face, her feet, sitting on her chest. One night, she ran out of the bedroom screaming, saying that it was messing with her again, and that she saw a tall shadow figure. I blew her off. I'd had plenty of my own paranormal experiences since I was 10, and I didn't want any more. But then about 2 weeks later, I went to bed late. She was already asleep. I climbed into bed and looked over my shoulder towards the bathroom door. There stood a 7-foot shadow figure. I immediately tried to debunk it by looking at the light coming from under the door from the living room. The bathroom light was not on, and there was foil over the windows since I worked nights and slept during the day. I then looked back towards it. It was standing there motionless. Next, I glanced to the left of it, at our closet. It was a large walk-in, with a green tapestry hanging on a rod for a door. The light was on the inside, and what did I see? Floating in the closet was a demon. It had scales like reptiles. Its arms were outstretched, with thumbs pointing down. It was rotating its head to the left and right. The best I can describe its face was hissing or seething. It had no legs, floating from the waist up. I watched it for a few seconds, just long enough to notice every detail of its skin and face. Then I laid down and immediately fell asleep. I am not religious and have never had any thoughts of demons before this moment. I witnessed two terrifying beings right before my eyes. Why did I just lay down and go to sleep? I think it had control over my mind. Sure, I've been to war a few times, but I'm not that brave. I later began to think maybe a jinn attached itself to me when I was in Iraq. I've had issues with extreme anger, rage, depression, and anxiety ever since, to the point of an arrest. It's weird because I'm actually into Buddhism, meditation, and helping people, but there's the other side of me now. If anyone had ever seen a demon like this, I'd love to get in touch. I'm now going through a divorce. In the last month of our relationship, I noticed on 2 occasions that my ex-wife's pupils were slit like a reptile or a cat. In our 10 years, I have never been afraid to say anything to her, but for some reason in those 2 moments, I didn't say a word. When my grandma was very sick, my parents decided to move closer to her in order to help treat her and make sure that she was comfortable during her final days. However, her final days seemed to drag on a bit longer than we'd all anticipated, and seeing that she was going to live for longer than we thought, which is a good thing, don't get me wrong, my parents decided to sell their old house and to live in hers. Her house was very large. It was the house that my father had grown up in, and it had been standing strong for at least 150 years. This was in rural England, and me and my parents liked the change of scenery and change of pace. However, there was something that always creeped me out: the basement. I never liked going down there. I never had any reason to. It was a very small, dark room, and didn't really have stairs, as they were rotting and old, and you had to be very careful as you treaded down if there was something that you needed to retrieve. For the most part, it was mostly used to store wine. That's what my grandma used it for anyway. I think it appeared to be more of an afterthought, as it was bricked up, but it was damp, and you could smell the earth around you. I never felt comfortable. However, as we moved in, my parents needed a place to store some old boxes, and so that's where they put them. It was on a typical Sunday that I was bored, and my dad told me to go find one of his power tools, as he was trying to fix one of the door hinges. When asking where it was, he told me that it was in the basement in one of the boxes. I really didn't want to go, and asked if my sister could go in my place. But she being 6 years old, he really didn't trust her with any of these tools. So down I went into the darkness in search for these tools. I turned on the light, which barely illuminated the small space, and started digging around the boxes for the tools. That's when something caught my eye. Something reflecting off one of the stones. I pushed the light, which was dangling from a wire, a little bit closer, to see if I could check out what this thing was. The sparkle had me excited. Money? Could it be money here? I couldn't see it well enough though. The illumination was too poor. So I quickly found my dad's power tool and told myself that I would be back to try and see what this mystery could hold. Upon returning a few minutes later with a decent torch, the light showed that it was indeed something metal. I tried pulling at it, to no avail. I was starting to pull at it, with no avail. Clearly, whatever it was sealed solidly into the wall. And that was it. I couldn't get to it, and I forgot all about it. Then a few years passed. I had grown up a fair amount. I was now 17, and my grandma at this point had passed away. But we ended up inheriting the house, and after paying off the tax, we were living there very happily. Me, my sister, my mother, and my father. It had taken some time to get used to the new environment, but this was now our home. One year, we had some particularly bad floods, and the basement flooded. Everything there was ruined, and 17-year-old me had the task of getting rid of everything that had been soaked. We managed to get all the water out, and we were considering just sealing it up. As we were debating this, I went down and made sure that I retrieved everything so that it could all be disposed, and to check on the off chance that anything was salvageable. I wasn't sure about the wine. My dad couldn't tell if water had got in or not, so sadly all of that had to be disposed of. But that's when I saw it again. The shiny thing in the wall. I hadn't been back here in a long time. I hated the basement, so I had no reason to. And that's when I wondered if this time I could pull it. So, with everything being so wet, and apparently the cement being weakened, I gave it a tug, and stronger 17-year-old me felt some movement. This caused genuine excitement. I started pulling it, and it became very clear that it was behind the brickwork. I started playing around, and after retrieving a knife from the kitchen, it was very, almost too easy to start taking the bricks apart by chipping away at the old cement. That is when I found it. Hidden behind here was a box, a metal tin. It was sealed, and sealed very well, might I add. When I managed to finally take the lid off, that I discovered what was hidden inside. An old Ouija board, as well as a few coins, notes, a die, and a few other bits and bobs. These must have been games, but why would anyone put games in a tin and bury them behind a wall in the basement? This left me very confused, but I was happy with my loot. Now bear in mind, me and my family were never raised religious, and I in no way believed in anything supernatural. These were just games. I mean, you had some classics there on paper, but the board was made out of solid wood. It was sturdy and looked the real deal. You could tell how old it was. So I invited my friends over a few days later to muck around with it. Fortunately for me, it was one of the days where my dad had to take my sister to a dance competition, and my mother, being the supportive mother she was, went with them, which left me and the house alone. It was your typical Friday evening. I invited the boys round, and we decided to have a go on the Ouija board. We tried to just muck around at first, pretending to be all spooky and creepy. We fetched a glass from the kitchen, put our fingers on it, and started saying, in a creepy and almost mocking tone, "If anyone's there, we invite you, ooh," like that. Silly, I know. I'm sure we must have offended something. We waited to see if there was any movement, but there was nothing. When we were about to give up, though, did movement start slowly coming through. Each of us, of course, thought that it was one of our friends making the glass move, but alas, we all denied it. One of the friends was writing everything down, and towards the end, we had a friend writing everything down, and whilst playing our Q&A, we established that we were talking to Sam, and Sam was not very happy. He just said no to most of our questions. We really weren't understanding it. We asked him where he died, and he just said no. We asked him if he was dead, and he just said no. And we asked him if he would like to continue talking to us, and only then did he say yes. We tried asking him how old he was, but there'd never be a reply. We were a bit creeped out by now, although I personally believed it was definitely Barry. Barry was always a joker. So the session concluded without much information. We weren't really happy and moved on to a different game. Bear in mind, we never said hello and we never said goodbye. So I'm not really sure how that works. Apparently it means we left the session open, and I think that was our mistake. The rest of that night was uneventful. But when I went to bed that evening, I had this heavy and oppressing feeling that was covering all my body. I tried to go to sleep, but felt really uncomfortable, and resorted to turning the light on in order to sleep all night. It gave me the comfort I needed to wake up happy in the morning, but it was still there. It felt like something was wrong. I tried telling myself I was just creeped out, that I was playing with this silly board and that it was getting to me, and that I should just move on. The feeling didn't go away, but as long as I remember, I tried putting it to the back of my mind. A few weeks later, I told myself that it had to do with the board, and put it up on eBay as an authentic Ouija board, which I thought could fetch a pretty penny, but only managed to get me about £25. Not that bad. I was just glad to be rid of it, to be fair. But the feeling never went away. That's when the apparitions started. I started seeing a shadow, some kind of weird smoke creature, standing at the foot of my bed at night. I'd be unable to move, and it would just be there staring at me. There'd be times when I would come into my room in the middle of the night and look in and turn the light on, and in that split second before the light went on, would I see the creature of shadow in a corner of the room or on the ceiling. But the moment the light switch flicked on, it would be gone. I was scared that I was going insane, that my mind was being consumed by this primal fear of that stupid board, but I tried to be stronger than it. The apparitions didn't cease though. Nay, they started to become more commonplace. I started losing sleep, and when I was dozing off at school, just at the point before I knew that I was going to pass out, did I see it. It was right by my teacher. This black, grey, smoke thing. This figure, just looming around, haunting me. I didn't know what to do. There was a girl in my class who was really into Wicca, and I tried telling her about it. I also thought she was really hot, and wanted to ask her out, and thought this would be the perfect segue into it. Clever 17-year-old me, trying to impress a Wicca girl by telling her that I think I'm being possessed by a demon, or at the very least, stalked by one. I told her about it, and she was intrigued, and told me a few things I should do to keep it at bay. She told me that I should burn sage. I didn't even know what sage was. That was quite hard to come by anyway. But I tried it, and it worked for a little while. But when I got bored, or lazy and stopped doing it, did the thing resurface, and it would be there again. It started to get incessant. I was becoming really paranoid, scared that every time I'd look in a dark space it would be there, sometimes even a light space. I just wanted this thing to be gone. So, I resorted to going down to the local church one day, and banged on the church door until someone came out. It was a priest, and I told him that I wasn't religious, but that I needed help. He listened to me, but basically dismissed me and told me to go home. I didn't know who to turn to. At this point, the girl that I'd been talking to, the Wicca one, had become my girlfriend, and we'd started to get really close to each other. She started seeing the thing as well when she'd stay over. Not that my parents knew she'd stay over, and she began to become frightened for my safety and well-being. She spoke to some of her Wicca friends, and basically got another board. She said that maybe the best thing to do would be to say goodbye and finish the session. She and I joined hands, lit some candles, and requested to speak to Sam. Sam answered, and it was the stereotypical no to every question, but did say that it was him, or at least I hoped. We asked if he would please leave, and he said no. When we asked why he was haunting us, he never gave a reply. I said as loud and forcefully as I could, I'm genuinely not sure where it came from, but I screamed at the top of my lungs, Sam, you are not welcome. You're not welcome here, you're not welcome in my home, and I condemn you by the grace of God to go back from whence you came. And then I dragged the cup up to goodbye and ended the session. Clever me thought that would be the end of it, and for the most part, it was. Quite boring, I know. I'm gonna be honest, I felt like quite a badass, telling a demon to go do one, and that I wanted to live my life freely. Things did crop up here and there. Shadows, things moving by themselves, but I got sleep and never saw the apparition full scale like that again. Maybe I opened a doorway to something. Maybe I could now see things that others couldn't. I don't really know how to describe it. All that I know is that life for the most part almost went back to normality. Me and the girl actually ended up getting married, and this piqued my interest in the occult and the paranormal. I don't know what would have happened to me if I'd have never met her and found a way to try and put this at bay. But I am happy with my life now and how things have turned out. I do have to be grateful though, as this experience made me who I am today. But still, it's not something I would ever dabble in again. I saw a demon 12 years ago. I had recently been arrested and had posted bail. I had thoughts of suicide, despair, hopelessness. I was asleep and woke up in the middle of the night. At the end of my bed was a beautiful woman with long red hair. She just stood there looking at me, and her hair seemed to float around her, as if she were in water. There was no noise, and I was speechless as to why such a beautiful woman was in bed with me. She smelled sweet. In a blink, her eyes went black, her hair disappeared, and her face sunk into itself, as if I were looking at a long dead person. The room smelled of earth, electricity, and rotting wood. She jumped up and floated in my room. Then she screamed. The sound vibrated my toes, and was so loud it was the sound of fear, of hate, and disgust. I, being a 30-year-old male, hid under the sheets until the scream stopped. Then an earthquake hit. I live in Indiana, and there are never any earthquakes here. And she was gone. I started going to church regularly the next day, and have never stopped. I've never seen her again, and never felt an evil presence in that way either. I have never known fear like that, and I pray I never will again. Hand to God this happened. I keenly remember every minute of that event. About 10 years ago, though I remember this like it were yesterday, I was visiting San Francisco with a couple of friends. We were staying in the attic of my friend's son in the Castro. It was somewhat late at night, maybe 10 p.m, and we were just chilling in the attic, 3 of us. Lights dimmed, so my friend was texting someone on her phone, and every time her phone lit up, a demonic figure would appear behind her, clear as day, almost hovering or hunched over her. He was standing right at me with a huge smile. Sometimes he was laughing, but there was no sound. I interpreted him as evil based on general appearance and demeanor. He was mocking me, mocking my fear. Our eyes were locked, and I was in complete disbelief. When her phone dimmed, he vanished. When it lit back up, there he was. I was completely terrified yet silent. I kept expecting him to disappear, and for me to realize it was an illusion. But that never happened. I had to finally break the eye contact to tell my friend about him. She freaked out, stood up, and started crying, and proceeded to call her parents, who then prayed on speakerphone in the room. Appearance. Almost just like a middle-aged man, but painted red. Weird, I know, but he was glistening a bright red color. He was bald, and had a very stereotypical demonic appearance. His laugh was extremely creepy, but again, inaudible. I can't believe not only that it happened, but that I've gone so long without digging deeper for answers. Recently, the topic of ghost sightings came up, and I told this story, only to realize I've never come to terms with it. I'm very eager to hear people's perspectives, and also, I'm a little afraid if I can summon him back if I think too much about him. This is not satire. I'm not looking for your fake online attention or internet points, nor would I waste my time. I believe that there is something supernatural happening to me. Either that, or I'm developing schizophrenia. Let me go back to the start. About 10 years ago, I was in a very dark place. I was becoming a sociopath. Yada yada, crappy childhood. Anyway, I never believed in God, or at the least, the stereotypical man in the sky with a beard. Obviously, whatever God is, it's far more powerful and far smarter than some petty, angry God who actually cares about the clothes that people wear and who they sleep with. But there was a divine power that has always been indisputable. Anyway, I hated everyone, myself most of all. I don't remember it exactly, but at some point I found myself praying to the divine that I would do anything to not be me, and not in a good way. As I said, I was in a very dark place. The divine I was praying to was not loving. I wanted power more than anything, and as insane as this sounds, I felt energy go through me, like goosebumps, but on the inside. Not adrenaline either, it's completely different. Ever since then, I've been able to temporarily make this feeling flow through my body, but I have to go to a dark place or to meditate. That's not the interesting part. This started about 4 years ago. I had matured quite a bit since then, and I was not nearly as dark and unhappy as I used to be, and very occasionally used mushrooms, LSD, and DMT, all in less than 10 times for everything. I was living with my grandparents at the time, and they are your stereotypical Christian old school grandparents. I was smoking a bowl at my house while my grandparents were at work. They never came home before 5. It was somewhere around noon, when I was smoking, that I heard a loud bang coming from my shed. I understood immediately that I needed to stop and go inside. So, I did. Not 1 minute later, my grandmother pulled in, because she had forgotten her phone. Ever since then, occurrences just like this happened to me. One time I needed a Ziploc bag, and when I opened my door to my room, there was a Ziploc bag right on the ground in front of it. Now, whenever I'm about to make a bad decision, I can hear certain noises. Not noises in my head, but if there's a sharp cracking noise to my right side, such as a water bottle crinking, or a pen rolling to hit the floor, just any high-pitched noise, I know the decision that I'm about to make is not a good one. If I hear a train before I make a decision, it's always, every single time, has led to a positive outcome. Sometimes, I'll wish for something to happen when I'm stressed out. For instance, I was doing landscaping for my uncle. and I was basically just shoveling gravel into a wheelbarrow and moving it for 8 hours for 3 days. Yes, I was being a little brat about it. I just begged for anything to happen to me so that I could get out of it. 30 minutes later, my father arrived and told me my other uncle had overdosed on heroin, and that we were leaving to go see everyone. I've even started seeing figures out of the corner of my eye. Sometimes I'll see a tracer or experience microplasia. I've experienced a green flash. I get random visions of an eyeball when I close my eyes sometimes. I once woke up at about 3 a.m. and was seeing visions of my cat. I could feel it outside the room, wanting in. My cat was sitting right there waiting for me when I opened the door. These occurrences happen frequently now. Maybe because I've learnt to see the signs, or maybe because I'm slowly losing my mind. All of this could be coincidence. All of it could be in my head. But I don't think so. I feel like it's a demon, but not in a bad way. I'm not afraid of it. I've tried to talk to it, but I always lose focus when I try. I do hear something speak to me when I focus and try, but never more than a few seconds. Even when I meditate and clear my mind, it's the same story. Did I summon a demon when I was younger? I offered my soul for power. That seems like a pretty bad idea to me looking back now. Any advice, any experts, anything like that would be much appreciated. This is coming from someone I know. A few years back, he was on his deathbed in the hospital. He had cat scratch fever, but one of those rare cases of it, so he said. He was praying out to God to save him from death, because he had been told he had just a few days left to live, and he said that he felt like God wasn't going to answer his prayers. So he said, "I don't care who saves me, but I want someone to." Then this lady in a black dress with a crow on her shoulder suddenly appeared at the foot of the hospital bed. He said he knew right away that she was a demon. She told him that she would save/heal him if he would believe in her, and he said he would. He then described that she came to the side of his bed, reached into his chest, and he said he felt her grab his heart and squeeze it for a few seconds, as binding pain covered him, and then she disappeared. When the doctors came to check back in on him, they found him fully recovered. He says that he sees this demon every Halloween, and that she sometimes is surrounded by dogs, either standing beside or in front of her. I don't have any more information about that. I've tried looking it up, but haven't found anything. Ever since I was a kid, I was prone to seeing things. Ghosts. Some unexplainable creatures. I sleepwalk and say some confusing, weird things. My mother has noticed it a lot, and my friends have mentioned it many times. I am super empathetic and can feel energy. It affects me a lot. So I've been seeing this humanish creature in my dreams. He is extremely tall, well-dressed, and terrifyingly handsome. His eyes are some unnatural color, and frankly, as soon as I wake up, I forget his face. A few months ago, I started seeing him outside my dreams. I woke up at 3 or 4 a.m. for no reason, and start seeing him either standing near the end of my bed or on my mirror. He just stares at me, and then he walks out or disappears, and the place where he usually stands feels cold all the damn time. It keeps happening. I wouldn't say I'm extremely scared, curious even. His energy feels inviting, yet terrifying. Well, last night I saw him again. My mother was sleeping in my room. He was standing near the mirror once more. I got up, put on my robe, and walked up to him. He is extremely tall. I could barely reach his shoulder at 5'7". I tried to touch him, and he reached out his hand and I blacked out and woke up in my bed. I figured it was just a crazy dream. But then my mother mentioned how I was murmuring about a man standing near the mirror, and heard me get up while she was half asleep. I'm not on any medication or hallucinogenic drugs. I don't drink often, and consider my mental health to be relatively healthy, except for the occasional panic attacks. Am I going insane? Is it a demon? A ghost? How can I contact it? I am not making this up. Frankly speaking, I wish I was. I am just very confused and would appreciate some proper answers. I know it sounds stupid, but I can hear and see demons. I can't see them face to face, but what I can do is see their reflection in TVs, mirrors, and windows. The one I see in the reflection of most wears a black cloak and looks very old, so you can't see his face because the cloak is covering it up, and he has sharp nails that look like razors. He has a hunchback, which makes him stand and sit weird, and he has a voice of a man in his 30s that smokes. This one isn't that mean, and the most he says to me is, "What are you doing? And how are you?" in his low voice, but it's nothing bad. The other one I've never seen, but I've heard it speaking to me. It was around 4 in the morning, and I just got a new dog, and we had her in her cage out in the mudroom, where we put our shoes on. She was pounding inside her cage and crying, but I don't know how to open her cage door, so I couldn't let her out, and after a little bit, I heard a loud rumble tell me, "Leave now." At that point I almost crapped myself, and ran up my stairs back to my room, and I heard my dog getting louder, and hear her barking and banging and crying. I have bad dreams about them, such as this one I vividly remember, where I was at the bottom of my stairs and I was taking a timed photo on my phone, which would make it take multiple photos, since I have an iPhone. But when I looked back at them, I saw this black shadow crawling down my stairs after me, and it looked nothing like the one I can see in the reflection of it, and it chased me around until I woke up. About 2 days later, I had a dream about it again, where there was a black shadow inside my closet that I was trying to keep inside, but at the end, he got out and started crawling after me, and then I woke up. I know it sounds crazy, but it is all true. There is a known demon house in my area, and I assume that by passing this is where it first attached to me. This demon first manifested itself to me when I was 13, and followed me pretty consistently until I was 17. It could never physically get to me. Something was mostly keeping it at bay. There was never physical harm. It just attacked my psyche. I believe I was born with psychic gifts, medium and clairvoyancy. But the longer the demon was attached, the more I lost touch with these gifts. So after a while, I hired a medium to see if I could get answers regarding the demon. And long story short, she said it was an extremely powerful one, and she refused to speak to it. So I never learnt its name. But she informed me the reason it couldn't get to me was because an ancient ancestor who was a warlock kept him at bay. With all that said, I still saw this demon in my dreams and in dark hallways. It always wore a black cloak. Occasionally there were things coming from its shoulders. I assumed those were wings, and it had dark red eyes. Now I've never been able to get answers on this. Any help would be much appreciated. Another thing it did, it would make me see things such as rows of shadows on both sides of the road at night, watching me. I haven't seen it in 3 years, but I do still feel it. My family has a weird thing with always having ghosts around us. Not sure why, it's always just been that way. My sister has been seeing this one figure for a long time. She said it has chalky white skin with black eyes. She sees it around a lot. It has round ears and a round head. We call it Monkey because it kind of looks like one. She has a lot of dreams, a few I can remember her telling me, about being almost always about to get her killed. One time, she saw herself bloated and dead. Multiple times have had to do with knives, and others she saw the basic idea of the devil. If you don't know, but you know something or someone that could help, I'd appreciate it. I really don't know who to turn to. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. Special thank you to each and every one of my patrons. Your help, of course, means the world to me, and it really helps in keeping the channel going, and all the other stuff that goes along with it. If you're interested in becoming a patron too, you can find the link in my description to have your name on here in a future video. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please do not forget to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts, as they always help. If there's a story that you wish to share, feel free to send it to my Reddit or my email. And hey, are you subscribed yet? Because you definitely should. Don't forget to press the bell icon to be notified of your nightly spooks also. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay safe, make sure those demons don't possess you, and I'll see you in the next one.